But I think what I'd like to do in this episode or today is first talk about the principles of flow in case a person isn't familiar with that concept. I mean, I think we all have like a little bit of familiarity with the idea of being in a flow state, but there are certain characteristics that define flow. And then two different layers of using your personality type as an access point for understanding your personal flow states.
Now, the premise I think we're coming from is that this is not a perma-state of being in flow. It is something that we enter into, we spend some time there, and then we leave and we come back to quote unquote the real world. But I think it is something that we can grow the time around. In other words, we can develop and build and create a life for ourselves that ergonomically, with our personality type, puts us in the best position to be in a flow state as much as possible. That's our belief. And that's what we talk about with personality types is this notion that if you create a world around you that serves who you are and how you're wired, there's going to be a lot of engagement in your life. You're going to feel a sense of purpose. You're going to feel a sense of passion, attunement, satisfaction, not only with yourself, but with the teams you work with, the people you engage with, and all the things that you do. So this is, I think this is an important conversation because this is something we want to encourage you listening right now to move toward in your life.
Well, and a lot of times when people experience flow, it's almost like it happened to them. Like they realize that in retrospect. But if you have a formula for what puts you into a flow state, now when you are feeling down or you are lacking energy, you feel like there's some nutrient missing in your soul, flow is a way to get a meal, right? It's intentionally generative to more than just your body or your mind. It's like it feeds the whole package. So not just going, oh, that put me into flow, that's interesting, and not really being sure why, and then not being able to replicate it. We're trying going the opposite direction, which is I know that these kinds of things put me in flow and I know why. And so when I need a flow state, I can go do these things. So we're using the term flow in the same way that Mihai Csikszentmihalyi in his book, Finding Flow. Or is it Finding Flow or is it just Flow?
Flow is his original book. I think he's got a second one, a shorter one,
right,
about how to find flow.
Right. The first one is just flow, though. And he used 8 different characteristics that define a flow state. So the 8 characteristics are clarity of goals and immediate feedback, a high level of concentration on a limited field, balance between skills and challenge, the feeling of control, effortlessness, an altered perception of time, the melting together of action and consciousness, and this concept of intrinsic reward, which is that the activity itself is rewarding to us. So a couple different things that most people, register when they're in a flow state are things like they lose track of time, right? They're like, oh, it felt like it was 5 minutes, but it was actually 2 hours. So that's a really important component to it. And then that idea of skill matching challenge. If we do something that is too easy, it doesn't put us into a flow state because we don't have to focus on it. It's, it's like, oh, that's too simple. But if it's so difficult, it's outside of our reach, that's not going to put us in flow either because now it's almost frustrating. In our attempt to do this thing, we can't do it. Maybe we're failing over and over. That's not going to put us in flow either. So finding things that match our current skill development with the challenge is really an important component. And that's why sometimes flow states change over time. What was once challenging to us at an earlier level of development is no longer challenging. So flow itself will also continue to change and evolve. And our relationship to it is going to change and evolve over time as well.
So think back at a time in your life, maybe recently, maybe in the past, some of these things we just talked about, these definitions of flow, can you identify a moment when you had a lot of these light up, maybe all of them, when they were in alignment, they were activated for you? That's probably a flow period of your life or a moment you were in flow in your life. So just see if you could maybe, as we're talking about this and conversing, just see if you could identify moments in your life you've had this happen to you.